would now like to introduce Captain Steve Brashear, Chairman of United Council 11, to share his thoughts on the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Captain Brashear.
Captain Moak, fellow pilots and guests, thank you for this invitation. It is indeed an honor for me, and one I am not confident that I deserve. I've been asked to share my thoughts on 9/11 from a personal perspective. And as I do so, I know all of us have seen image upon image and commentary upon commentary, and 9/11 commissions, and the aftermath is huge. But if you can try to remember the utter unbelievability of that day, it would be helpful. On 9/11, I was flying. It was flight 1524 from Sacramento to Denver. It was an early departure, 6 a.m., about the same time that the tragic events were unfolding in New York. Shortly after level off, we began to receive messages from our onboard communication system, ACARS, for the pilots. I saved them. It began with possible hijack in progress at New York Center. Newark, JFK, LaGuardia are all shut down due to World Trade Center crash of 2 large aircraft. Possible UAL, AMR, not sure yet of companies involved. Please limit cockpit access due to this. I held it between me and the first officer, and we read it in silence. For a long time, silence. My first thoughts were of the pilots. When I could finally utter something, I muttered to my first officer, "They must have killed the pilots." None of us would intentionally crash an airplane, even with a gun to our heads. They must have killed the pilots. The next message, nationwide ground stop in progress. All aircraft. The next message said RTB, which is a military term for return to base, but can be confusing in airline life. We called our purser and said the secret knock of 2 and 1 will no longer work. We made an announcement to our passengers that we had been directed to land, that everything was all right with our airplane, and when we knew more, we would say so. As we proceeded to Salt Lake City, which was going to be our divert base, I commented to the first officer that, you know, with every plane in the sky diverting, we're going to be on the tarmac a long time waiting for a gate. This could be a long, long day. No sooner had I said that than a message came over that said, "Gate will be available. Deplane immediately." And you think I would have become frightened before that, but that's when I became scared, because I realized that this event was still in progress and much was unknown. There could have been other perpetrators, bombs on board. Nobody knew, and we were directed to land and deplane immediately. We did, and we deplaned immediately. And we went inside the terminal and got in front of a TV screen, just like every one of you, and we saw the grim truth. We were in Salt Lake City 2 days before we continued our flight to Denver. We landed in Salt Lake City with 104 passengers. Only 4 returned for the continuation of the flight to Denver. In Denver, United Airlines provided a 747 that was going from hub to pick up and deliver employees and get them home as efficiently as possible. Around midnight, we boarded a 747, landed in Chicago, deplaned employees, enplaned more. We landed in Washington about sunup. I said goodbye to my first officer. I got in my car. I have roughly a 2-hour drive home, and I made it in silence. On my way home, the church that my family and I belonged to had its doors open and a sign in front commenting on the attacks. I parked my car, I went in, I sat in a rear pew, and I cried. For the first time since the event, I was overcome and overwhelmed, and I cried. After that, like all of us, I've had time to contemplate what happened to our brothers and sisters that day. And it caused me to think about what we all do each day. All of us, Vic, Jason, Mike, Leroy, and all the names that Captain Rice just read, they found themselves knowingly, unexpectedly, and without preparation on the front line of an attack. In the blink of an eye, they became our fallen comrades and honored heroes. They did not want to be. They did not get a choice. A cowardly act of evil enemies took them from us in an instant. Fate called upon them to take the first fatal blows of a surprise attack. If they were here today, they may not recognize many aspects of our profession. Much has changed in the 10 years that we have lived without them. But hopefully they would recognize our resolve and our devotion to this profession and to our American way of life. On 9/11, the absolute purest in American spirit came to the surface and eventually prevailed. When our pilots and our cabin crews were murdered and their planes were hurled at their defenseless targets, innocent lives were taken from all of us. Then when the passengers rose up on Flight 93, the deadly mission of the terrorists could not be completed. And as the towers collapsed, and the firefighters and the police officers and the rescue workers, we watched as they gave their lives freely to save those that they thought could still be saved. Only the spirit that lives within citizens of a free nation can cause such a response as we witnessed that day. Each day since, it has fallen to us as a tribute to them and in memory of their sacrifice to live the way they would have lived and to show each day that the spirit that makes people rise up to help their fellow Americans still burns in each of us. We have all had 10 years of life that they did not get. And we must live in a way that shows that the ties that bind us to them, the ties of spiritual and resolute devotion to this profession that bind us to them, cannot be broken, not by time and not by death. And finally, to the families, to the wives, the children, the parents, and the extended relatives of our fallen brothers and sisters, I would say, do not despair, but please find comfort in knowing that on that fateful day, you and they became family to all of us. Indeed, because of their sacrifice, we have all become family, and as family, we will never forget. Thank you.